Reconsider Christ podcast provides real-life examples on how Christ works to interact with our lives. Our guests paint on the canvas of life their stories of joy, heartache, struggle, and victory. You will learn more about the true nature of Christ, for it is time to reconsider Christ. Tom Tognoli built the largest real estate agency in the state of California while figuring out his relationship with Christ and how to integrate his faith into his company. Tom walks us through his experience of living in fear to living by faith. Fear of failure, fear of being an imposter, fear of not living up to his friends' expectations led him to try to find happiness in cars, women, and alcohol. Over time, Tom's growing faith led him away from a life of fear. Tom sold his real estate agency, Intero, to Berkshire Hathaway and was selected as the CEO of the Intero division. This allowed Tom to live his faith out in his everyday work, causing the company to continue its rapid growth. Now the leader of One Flourish, Tom leads a group of investors who look for character-based and faith-based entrepreneurs to invest in and nurture. He'll share his secret sauce today. Tom will challenge you to move from fear to faith. Hello, Tom. I am so excited to have you on the podcast today and for our audience to get to know you. It's just a fascinating story, and I can't wait. Thank you for being here.
Super excited to be here with you today, Gene. Thanks for the opportunity. San Francisco meets Texas.
Well, let's don't get carried away. But as I have told you and others have heard periodically throughout my podcast and writings, that I have a place in my heart for San Francisco because of all the time we spent there with Kay, and then going to Pepperdine down south. Yeah, so I understand why you're a different country, but we'll stop there.
I love it.
Yeah. So Tom, as I told you the other day in one of our conversations, we kind of start with childhood. Sometimes your relationship with Jesus begins then, sometimes it doesn't. But tell us a little bit, who are you and Jesus in the early years?
Yeah, so I grew up Catholic. Both of my mom grew up Lutheran and converted to Catholicism when we were kids because they felt it was important that we had that foundation. So, I went to, catechism, first communion, all of that, but I just would have to say it never sunk in for me, really, to be honest. Part of the problem growing up as a kid is, I had learning disabilities. And so just sitting still and, reading anything, much less the Bible, was incredibly difficult. Right. And so as a young kid, I, go to church every Sunday with my mom and dad and communion and all of it. So I grew up with that foundation in place, but I would say it was more of a chore than it was.
So a chore, even. That's a pretty strong word for a kid.
Yeah. Well, especially an ADD dyslexic kid who can't sit still and has to sit in the pew for an hour and his dad's holding his leg still.
Yes. Everything you're not is what you were supposed to be.
Well, and then back then, they didn't also probably have, I'm assuming they didn't even have it back then, childcare and all the programs that they're available for kids today.
Right.
To accommodate, to talk to them their language, right?
Yes.
Which exists back then. You just went to church with your mom and dad, right?
Right. Yes. Well, that's fascinating. And then, so you've kind of got an acquaintance. You've heard some concepts, high school, college. You're kind of your own person, probably. Tell us about that experience. And was Jesus in the room, in the city limits?
I would say he was in the state, maybe the city limits.
Okay.
It was more about, girls, cars, beers, and having a good time, right? I mean, I was, but I was always, I think I always had Jesus in my heart because I was always a good person. I think, if you go back over, my life, I don't have really any enemies, and all my friends' parents would say that I was a nice kid growing up and I was super respectful and all of that. But, school was never a priority to me, but I was always an entrepreneur. I didn't really even know that that's what it was, but
Right.
I mean, the last time I had a job, I was 16, working for a lumber yard
Mhm.
in the Bay Area. And so, yeah, it wasn't, it was, I wouldn't say really, God was a focus of mine really at all until probably my kids were born,
Mhm.
and you know, my wife had a little bit of a health scare. That was probably 15 years ago. That was another big pivotal moment that kind of changed
Mhm.
things as
Yeah.
well.
Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. The thread I want to pull real quick that you just brought up, you've been entrepreneurial before entrepreneurial was cool.
Yeah.
So what were some of your early entrepreneurial efforts in high school and college?
Well, so of course, like every kid, I was mowing lawns and doing all that stuff when I was a
Right,
little kid. As soon as I could push the lawnmower, I was out
right,
pushing the lawnmower for $1, right? I mean, every
right.
every every boy in town did that. They don't do that anymore, but that's what we all did when we were
Yes, yes.
kids. But when I was 17, my mom was in the real estate business,
Hmm.
and I was working for a lumber company, just weekend warrior lumber stuff,
Right.
and saw an opportunity, like, hey, she's selling all these houses and people are painting these houses, and so I'm gonna start painting houses. And I quit my job, and I can remember my manager telling me, like, you're out of your mind, that's never gonna work. And then all through college, I had a painting company. My dad actually retired and worked for me during college. My
How'd
buddy
that work
all
out?
working for me. I painted the church that we went
Yeah,
to, St. Martin's, the
yeah.
classrooms. And again, to me, I was just making money. I wasn't I was just making money. I wasn't
Right.
making,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then that was kind of, again, being always an entrepreneur. I knew going to college, actually, when I graduated high school, because my mom was in the real estate business and I was a little bit familiar with it, and painting houses, and I was painting fences for real estate agents I was like, I think I could do this.
Right,
And so I actually went to college because my parents kind of brainwashed us that college was just an extension of high school. It wasn't a choice.
right, right.
Although I probably really was. I didn't think it was. So I went to college, but always knew I was going to get into the real estate business when I graduated, because there was no way in the world I was going to be an engineer, a doctor, or an attorney with a 2.52 GPA. But I could be an entrepreneur, right?
Exactly.
And
Perfect.
so I jumped into the real estate business.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of it's, I think, just the pressures of leadership and, you know, uh, responsibility
Hmm.
is
So,
when life kind of became real.
yeah. So it's very natural step then into real estate, and because of your mother's experience and then what you were doing, and to take that step into it. And as the audience knows, that turned into the largest real estate agency in California, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. One of the biggest in, we were blessed because we live in Silicon Valley and our average sales price is so high, right? So
Right.
that's certainly a big help. But yeah, no, we had 3,000 realtors, 80 offices. We had a franchise company, a brokerage company, a title company, a mortgage company, and all the other companies that could be attached to a real estate company. We
Right.
were managing, and all the pressure that comes with doing all of that.
Mhm.
When you kind of realize that you need something a little bigger
Yeah.
than yourself.
Yeah. Well, take us through that process. So you're out of college, you're doing real estate. I assume maybe you're even working for your mother's company, or you're out on your own doing it, and you start having these ideas. I need to gather others around me doing this.
Yeah. So again, it wasn't, I don't think, well, number one, my mom and I were competitors, believe it or not, because so I still live 14 houses from my mom and dad in the house I grew up in, Sunnyvale, California, 1 mile from the Apple Computer headquarters, which is weird. My mom and dad moved here in 1965 when it was cherry and apricot orchards because it was all they could afford.
Uh-huh.
Right. And now we happen to be in the middle of Silicon Valley. Yeah, so I was always one of those that just, when I was in the real estate business, it's like if there was something on the ground that needed to be picked up, I just always picked it up. I was just that guy. If somebody needed help, I was just, hey, I'm the first guy, I'll help. I just always helpful, right? I was like, hey, I'm always to help. And so just kind
Mhm.
of being that guy just continued to open doors for me over the time, just being a nice guy and working hard.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I was selling real estate. The next thing you know, they're like, hey, we need to make you an assistant manager. And then the next thing you know, hey, we need to make you a manager. And, our company gets acquired. And then the next thing one of the people, it's all about relationships. Back to you said, these are people that I had been friends and had relationships with since I was in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then our mid 30s, we got the opportunity to, raise some capital and go out and start Intero, which ultimately ended up getting acquired by Berkshire in 2014. I wish I could say it was a mapped out process. I can't tell you, when we started Intero, we didn't even have an office. We didn't even have a name. I can remember standing in the parking lot, and we just left good paying jobs, like literally laughing until we were crying in the parkings. We had no idea what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And everybody was scared to death that we were building this great big real estate company. But we had no idea. So
right.
But yeah, so we raised capital. We had an angel investor. We bought out our angel investor in 2007.
Now, was that to start the mortgage or the vertical integrations?
No. So the reason the investor got into the real estate business, why they wanted to get into the real estate business, why they funded us to start a real estate company, was they were a title insurance company.
Okay.
And they saw all the real estate companies going into the title insurance business, and they thought they were going to lose all their business.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, we're going to start a real estate company that can drive title insurance to all the title insurance. So we used them, but we ultimately wanted to buy them out because we felt like, there was a bigger opportunity for us to do it. They were a title insurance company. They had a different motivation than we had, even though we could kind of coexist. And so we had been trying to buy them out for a couple of years, and then we ended up ultimately buying them out in April of 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, if you wanted to pick the absolute worst day to buy a real estate company in the history of the world, that was the day. In 2007. Again, so talk about, those are all faith strengthening moments, right?
Yes.
Through so from 2007, literally inverted financial sheet, balance sheet. I was probably had a negative net worth at one point,
Mm-hmm.
Going through the recession. But again, like anything, you work hard, you're around good people. Those that survive tough times end up thriving in the long run. And so we came out of the recession, everybody else had gone out of business, recruited all the realtors, and kind of then things kind of took off.
Really expanded.
Yeah.
So let's go back a few steps. So I would assume during this time before Intero, you're in real estate, you're growing, you're part of this company that gets sold. And that's the time where you start deepening your relationship with Jesus, and you find a wife and start a family, right?
Yes.
Talk me through that.
Well, so I've actually been dating my wife since we went to high school. So, but yeah, I think a couple things, getting married, kids, taking on more leadership responsibility, and candidly just being, people focusing on you more. You can't hide anymore, right? You can't, when you're the leader, you're exposed.
Yes.
You're exposed. And, there's all sorts of different ways that people cope with that. They cope with alcohol, drugs, sex, food, whatever. And I can remember the moment. It was probably 2000, before we started. So maybe 2000, 2001, maybe. At a moment in a parking lot with one of my partners bawling, hugging him. And because everybody on the outside thought life was great, right? We had this, we were running one of the top Coldwell Banker offices in the United States. I was making money, had a great car, beautiful wife, beautiful blonde little towhead kid, but I hated myself. And because I kind of felt like I was being an imposter. I wasn't being authentic to who I really was. I was trying to act like who I thought I should be as this guy that was the successful realtor, manager, leader. And that was the beginning of what I would say kind of, God grabbed me on the shoulder. I don't even know why. I was one of the lucky ones. I was probably partying too much at the time. I stopped drinking, or at least that was the time I stopped drinking. I was super healthy. I just flipped the switch, and there was nothing, no car accidents, nothing crazy. It was just, I was unhappy. And that was beginning. And it was, I would say it was, it's been a process ever since, right? It still is, right? Of, just candidly, for lack of a better word, excuse my language, getting my shit together. Quit being an imposter, and it's exhausting to fake who you are. And I do think a lot of people do that. I see it a lot. A lot of people are afraid to be authentic and vulnerable and reveal their heart because they're afraid people are going to take advantage of them. And I was that way for a long time. And it wasn't until I finally realized, when I just became authentic and vulnerable and broken, that everybody embraced me. And actually that was true leadership. Right. And then I just leaned into it, and then it's just kind of been a journey of, meeting people like you and Skip and Reed, and God's just kind of honestly just served me up people for the last 25 years. And I've just been, I think, hungry and observant and paying attention, where a lot of people just let those people walk by them.
Right.
I've been looking for people that have what I want, and it's not necessarily money. Hey, I'm a capitalist and I like to be successful and I like to make money and I like to win and I want to make all my friends money. I want to make everybody successful. That's fun for me. That's what I love to do. I love to make other people, I love to lift other people up. I love to make other people successful. That's my God-given gift. And so once I finally realized that, literally I completely took the parking brake off. When I finally became comfortable putting a Bob Marley picture behind me on a Zoom and not worrying what Gene was going to think about Tom.
Right.
And just be like, I'm going to wear it. This is who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry that if Gene, if you don't like me, but I'm not going to try and fake who I am to make you like me.
Right.
Either you're going to like me because you like me and I'm going to like you because but I don't want to fake Gene and you don't want to fake Tom.
Right. Exactly.
And once you kind of realize it's a very liberating feeling.
So let's go back. I want to talk a little bit about this imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So obviously, to feel like you were an imposter, you were holding two things in contrast.
Yeah.
What were those two things?
I think that on the outside, all of I wasn't happy. I wasn't super healthy. I wasn't taking care of myself. And I was still young. I was in my 30s, early 30s, right?
Did you feel like you were behaving a certain way?
Yeah, I was behaving a certain way. I was saying this out of my mouth and doing this on the other hand, right? I wasn't being authentic, and I wasn't.
And what was that? Because it's just curious, because
people
say it all the time.
Yeah, so what was the alcohol? Some of it was alcohol and addiction. Some of it was, that was probably, and then just from that comes all sorts of other things. But, again, I think the big thing was, look, I was the first guy out of high school to buy a house in my community. And all the guys I went to because I had something to freaking prove. Right. I was the first guy to buy a Beamer. My wife's smoking hot. I had the best looking wife, I think.
And that's all that counts.
That's all that counts. And, all my friends looked at me and thought but down deep inside, I was really, it was all just this stuff. And I just never felt satisfied inside. I just felt, like I was doing it for everybody else, but I wasn't really doing it for myself. I was doing it because I wanted everybody to think that I was successful and everybody to, I think, again, I don't know, because you're kind of just numb to it all when you're going through it. I think, you're just, right. Again, it's part of, I think, just also discovery, because I see a lot of young people going through that now when I talk to them, right? There's, you kind of, I think, almost operate a little bit in fear up until you're in your 30s sometimes, if you don't have faith, right? You operate by fear, and then if you're lucky, and some people operate I think, from fear till the day they die.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're lucky, and I was one of the lucky ones, I tell everybody, somehow I found faith, and it helped me overcome all the fear of what people thought of me, of making decisions that some people might consider to be risky.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to take chances and do things that others are not willing to do, because I just have faith that it's all going to work out. And I feel like I've been able to lean into it. And I still want what you have, Gene, because you have a closer relationship with Jesus than me, I think.
Well,
I just
be
do.
careful.
I do. I'm so hungry for it. Honestly, I'm hungry for that. I know I have it, but I know there's more, and
Yes.
I think, so that's it. And then just candidly being, blessed to get, all of a sudden then Skip Vaccarello shows up in my life. I get invited to a prayer breakfast event.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who Skip Vaccarello is from Adam. Somebody introduces me to him.
Right.
For some reason, God had our eyes connect and we clicked, and he reached out to me. So let's go out and have coffee. I just want to get to know you. And and all I just did was said yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just get out of the way, and just, but I also candidly, and this, Gene, a big part of what I would consider, that other part of my life was dysfunctional partnerships, managing dysfunctional relationships, and so having, people like Skip and others to walk alongside you and pray with you and reassure you. And then again, for me, it was just seeing what people like Skip and his crew all had,
Mm-hmm.
which was this glow and happiness and purpose, and then I see a lot of these other people who I know that I love dearly that are in pain, emotional pain. They don't even know they're in pain.
Right.
But I know I don't want to be part of that group. I want to be part of the Skip group and the
Right.
Reed Rutherford group and the David Lane group and the Esther group and the Gene group. And so just spending more time and marinating with people like you has been a big part of it, is living my life with you and not just doing it on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's been evident in everything that you've done. So Intero is growing like crazy. It's just obviously probably almost out of your control.
It is.
It's going so fast. So what are you and Jesus talking about during these days? This fast growth, your kids are growing up,
well, I'll tell you. So for the first, when we started, I had a couple mentors that were older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say from like 2000, probably till we bought, from the time we bought the company 2007 until the time we sold it 2014 was incredibly challenging on just a host of different fronts, financially, partnership challenges, big egos, all of that stuff that happened. That was also partially what led to me wanting to my motivation wanting to kind of sell our company to Berkshire, is I wanted to free myself from some of that, because I wanted to spend more time with the Skips and the Genes of the world, but I had to spend time in this, what I felt was not where I wanted to spend my time, but I was forced into it because I was an investor and owner and personal guarantees on loan. Then we sold the company in 2014 and I became CEO of Intero. And actually when that happened, all the partners kind of went their own way and took different roles within Berkshire Hathaway. And so I took over as CEO of that company. And then basically I was able to run it kind of like my ministry.
Right.
I did for 5 years. I was as on fire for everything you could possibly imagine, because I finally was able to do it the way I wanted to do it without, just the way I felt that it needed to be done. And I could love on people, and I just, the way it would have been run before, to me was unhealthy and made me sad, and it was bumming me out, to be perfectly honest. And so for 5 years, I was able to get in there and just freaking be on fire, man. And I was all in, man. It was awesome. I had a blast.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So excellent. And so talk us through that. So you talked a little bit about what you didn't like. So talk about some specific changes you made as you took over as the CEO. you've got Berkshire now as the backdrop, the net, and you've got the situation where you can lead now. You've got some of this dysfunctional relationships spread out into other parts of Berkshire, and so now it's your baby. You go in. Top 3 changes you made.
Oh gosh. Yeah, you can share it, I guess. I mean, I basically took down the shrine to one of my partners that had been created, which was part of the problem. And I made it
this fine shrine. Was there like a gold little temple in the office?
No, there's like, every, he had been received, recognition and accolades across the country for doing amazing things. And this real, and there was images everywhere. And it was about him and not the people, as far as I was concerned, it was about, and so I just got in and, I can't believe I had a lot of super close personal relationships with the agents at Intero that a lot of the other parts. So I just literally dove in and I just loved on everybody, I guess is maybe what I would say. That's probably the biggest change I made. I loved on people. I empowered people. I encouraged people, I was the guy when you walked in the office, everybody knew when I came to work. When I walked through the front door, everyone was getting high fives and we were getting after it and having fun and laughing. And nobody had fear. There was no anxiety. There was no, everybody was excited to come to work. I can't say they were that way before.
Right.
And then one of those dysfunctional relationships came back in, and I ended up ultimately having to leave Intero and leave Berkshire in 2019.
We'll come back to that in a moment. So if I summarize what you felt like was your big change, you really took hero worship out of the equation.
Yeah, maybe. I don't even know what it was. It was all like, I wish I could say I read some book or something. It was kind of, because I can't hardly read because I'm dyslexic and ADD, right? So it's like, for me, it was just, I just watched people who I know, love, and respect. And, I have good family, and I just tried to treat everybody, the right way. And again, everyone gets overfilled and underfilled in certain areas. I was just overfilled in my ability to encourage people and inspire energy. There's a lot of things I'm not good at, but that I'm good at. And so I just leaned into it. I was very comfortable with what I don't know. And I'm super comfortable bringing people in who know a lot more about that than me, and leaning on them for support, love, and help, like my partners at One Flourish. Right? I have a PhD in people. I tell everybody, I understand the people part because I've dealt with all of it.
Well, you're gifted in that area, obviously, and part of the giftedness that comes from God for you. So let me ask the question this way. I assume you had multiple locations with that many people involved, and you had multiple companies. So Tom can't be everywhere at once. I know you want to be, but you can't be everywhere at once in this growing and large company. You're having a tremendous impact on the culture, taking fear and anxiety out. But how did you extend and magnify your influence to have this not only where you showed up every day, but throughout the company?
Number one, hiring some of the right people to come in and that saw the world kind of the same way that I did. That was probably the biggest part of it. It's leveraging, I was very good, intuitively. There's not a lot. I'm good at social media. I just understand, I never was taught, but even I've had marketing people say, I get it. I know how to climb inside people's hearts through social media. I know how to lift people up online. So I could have 3,000 people all over the planet, and I could still make them all feel like we had a personal relationship. I literally, people to this day will still come up to me, and I would, I wrote a weekly blog called Monday Morning Mojo for 20 years. And I sent it out to the entire company, inspiring them every Monday. It would go out at 5 a.m. So
Mhm.
everybody it felt like a family. And so, but then it was bringing some other people in that could help amplify kind of some of the things that I was doing, because candidly, a lot of the people that we had on the team before we sold had been so beaten down, and we're just, I'm sorry, they were just abused. I needed some
Mhm.
fresh, so I brought in some fresh blood, some really good, and some of those guys now are running Intero,
Yeah.
to come in and kind of, but that took time too. It didn't happen overnight. I will tell
Right.
you, I know my wife would tell you that our marriage suffered, I was up at 4:30 every morning and working until 9 o'clock at night, and I was all in, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And again, real estate's a hard business because everybody's independent contractors. You can't tell anybody what to do. Remember, I only had probably 150 employees and 3,000 independent contractors.
Mhm. Yes.
And so you can't, so you have to, and this is kind of like ministry, right? It's the same thing with church. You can't tell everybody in church what to do. You have to
Mhm.
inspire them. You have to share stories. You have to get them excited and inspired to go out and take action. And that was just kind of
Mhm.
how I did it.
Mhm. Mhm. So, yes, that's fascinating, and the extension through hiring the others. So I now have like 14 questions. So let me sort them a little bit here. So I want to go back because it's an area, I mean, I think back on my life, and when I was, making the big career jumps, I'd be up early, not quite 4:30, but you're in California, so you had to get up earlier than the rest of the world. But you know, just going hard all day, driving fast to get to basketball and
Yeah.
volleyball games,
Yeah.
coming home, trying to be calm and putting people to bed, and then jump on the email until 1 or 2 in the morning. Um, what price did we pay?
Yeah. It's like you said, I mean, I kidded myself. I mean, I did it. Hey, I'll pride myself in that I never missed one of my son's baseball games.
Mhm.
But I can't say I was there for every baseball game.
Exactly. Yes, I
You know,
know.
and so I probably played a little bit of a mind game with myself through that, yeah, no, there's a price,
What?
right?
Yeah. So what drives us? So you're in, you're in the people. I mean, to me, this is really the crux of what so many people struggle with. How do I be excellent at work? How do I be excellent at home? How do I be excellent, in whatever else, I want to spend time in? And it kind of goes back to this balance deal, but I don't want to go there. I want to go to am because I think of my life, I was fearful.
Oh, I was fearful.
That's why I worked that hard.
Yes, me too. Amen. Amen.
So
Totally.
tell me about that.
Yeah, no, and look, I think I probably have PTSD from my whole life, just basically being an entrepreneur. I've lived paranoid forever.
Mhm.
That's the life of an entrepreneur. You have
Right,
to be able to live paranoid.
right.
And so, very painful, then we can't tell. There's been a lot of times I looked back and I'd see some of my buddies working in these other jobs. There was a price. There is a price for all of that.
Mhm. So do you believe, or would you think back now, 2020 hindsight, do you believe you could build Intero with a more, what's the right word I want to use? With a reduced schedule. And I'm not talking reduced like 8 hours to 6 hours. I'm talking reduced like from 90 hours to 60 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, again, one of the challenges though with the big companies, this too, is it's all about maximizing human capital, right? So
Right.
when you're owned by Berkshire Hathaway, it's like, they don't want, yeah, it'd be nice if I could hire 3 or 4 people to go execute on my stuff. So I don't know, a lot of it is outside of your control, partially,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I could, I still, I struggle with it now at One Flourish, right? I'm all gas, no brake. It's just how my life, it's how my brain works. I candidly wish sometimes I could just not be that way, right?
Right.
But
So let's take that bridge real quick, because I think it's a natural place to do it. You had these struggles, extremely successful, set all sorts of records. Your family survived, and growing more and more in relationship and depth. But I've got 1,800 questions now, so let me pick carefully in the time we've got here. So I guess question number one would be, during that time, responding in fear, and yes, this phrase, we should do a whole talk or podcast together on maximizing human capital. Such a horrible phrase. So what you do, are you just kind of saying, yeah, Jesus, it's great to know you. I can't use you in my life.
I will tell you what I did. A lot of it was working out. Was actually Jesus. Working out was a big, listening to music, right? That was a big part of my, that's why I got up at 4:30 in the morning. I needed that hour and a half to just kind of recharge myself, but knowing what I know now, and when you're not so worried about what everybody else thinks about you, you can operate in faith, not fear. Right. But when you're worried about what everybody's going to think of you, I worried about that a lot. And I think a lot of us worry about that, especially kids worry about that a lot. Mm-hmm. I still worry about it. Like we're human, right? I think that's one of the most debilitating things on the planet is, people just need to have the attitude of, what you think of me is none of my business. Mm-hmm. And just, I think that's the message. If I went back doing it again today, I would be, just love on people,
Right. And be authentic in that way. So, when did
I think actually our company would have been 10 times bigger. Intero, as successful as it was, I don't think was as nearly as successful as it could have been.
Because if you had taken out the fear and the anxiety earlier,
the anxiety, the devil, the power, the narcissism, the abuse, it could have been magic.
Yes. So now you're at One Flourish, which is a group, and if I simplify it too much, forgive me, a group of investors who want to pour this knowledge right here that we talked about. Obviously, there's extreme business knowledge experience in the group you have. I mean, the people I've met that you've got in your inner circle are just astounding. I'm just glad to tell people, hey, I met with so-and-so, because it's so astounding. So you've got these astounding people in you, and you're trying now, not only to say, here's how you get a return on the capital, here's the next steps you need to do as an entrepreneur, but hey, let me push this in there. Don't be fearful. Don't be paranoid. Talk to me about that.
Again, we're invested right now in 18 early stage companies in our fund in One Flourish, with others, I'm invested in, 20 of those companies. Again, our objective when we invest, number one, is we need to make great returns for our investors. That's candidly, without that, nothing else, that's the gasoline that feeds this opportunity, right? Yes. And candidly, I believe so much in it that I personally got my own money, my family's money, and friends' money in it, and so I know from past experiencing running businesses that, if we focus, you need to focus on the business piece, of course. That business piece needs to make sense.
Right.
I would argue that sometimes the business piece isn't the most complicated part. It's the people in the business. And so when you can find a great business that has the potential to make great money, if you can and change the world and do all sorts of cool things, if you can surround that business with the right kind of people, with loving, compassionate, hardworking, want to do the right thing kind of people, that's called high character people,
Right.
that really love each other and really, believe in, the values of their company and building a culture around those values. And, at the end of the day, I experienced it firsthand when your people are happier and your people are thriving personally and professionally and all these other areas of their life, their business is just absolutely rocket. And so, yes, we're helping them raise money. Yes, we're helping them make great introductions to other people that could potentially buy or sell their products or services, all that other stuff that everybody does. I mean, that's venture capital.
Right.
Our secret sauce is the piece that you and I are talking about today, which doesn't really, I'm kind of surprised it doesn't exist more than it does. I thought it would have existed more in venture capital, but, there's an incredible hunger, with all the entrepreneurs that I meet, they just need somebody who cares. Listen to them. They need somebody to talk about this kind of stuff with, to help them feel better, because when they feel better, they can help their people feel better. When their people feel better, their people are more productive and they can help the business be more successful and they can make a more positive impact in the world. Right. So at the end of the day, we've invested that's kind of our thesis. We invest, and again, my partners are amazing, Harvard, Stanford, Pepperdine, like Dartmouth, amazing, very successful people that have been around for an incredibly long period of time. We understand how to run businesses and make money, and we'll continue to do that, but we're bolting on this other piece, which is kind of mushy, right, to a lot of people, but it's really kind of a coaching piece. And being, David was yesterday up in San Francisco with the founders of Butler, one of our portfolio companies. And you know what David was most excited about when I talked with him before I got on the call with you?
No.
He walked in and the entrepreneur, Hong Ho Dang, who's not Christian, from South Korea, walked in and gave David a huge hug and told him how much he cared about him.
Totally against his culture.
I mean, Hong Ho Dang would never have done that if we weren't around.
Yeah.
And here's the reality of it: is we're not the biggest. We're a small fry investor in their business. And they've raised tens of millions of dollars. Their valuation probably close to $100 million company. We're a small fry investor, but what they love about us is that we care about them. We're checking on them. We're encouraging them. We're opening up our networks. Aren't beating them over the head every single day. There's other ways to get people to do what you want or what they need to do by lifting them up versus tearing them down.
Tom, thank you so much for your vulnerability and transparency and really what we've been talking today, a fear versus faith and what we do over. And thank you again for being a part of our podcast.
Yeah, you're a blessing, Gene. Thanks for having me. Great stuff.